All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name's Nicole, and welcome back to our English class. All right. For the past couple of days, we've been a bit of an adventure. Wow, adventure. Exploring, we explored how different consonant sounds come together in English words. So we have learned that sometimes two or three consonant sounds can appear right next to each other, right? So this forms what we call consonant clusters. Okay? So think of them like a group of friends all hanging out closely together in a word. Okay. So a quick look back on Wednesday, we started our journey by focusing on initial consonant clusters. So these are the consonant friends that show up right at the very beginning of a word. So we practice saying words that start with these groups of sounds. So we make sure all those sounds came out clearly and smoothly. Then yesterday, we moved our attention to medial consonant clusters. As the name suggests, these are the consonant groups that appear right in the middle of the word. Okay? We worked on breaking down words and recognizing those clusters that are nestled right in the middle. And today, of course, we are going to bring our discussion on consonant clusters to a perfect close by focusing on the ones that show up at the very end of the words. These are what we call final consonant clusters. Now, just like their initial and medial bodies, these clusters are a group of consonant sounds that appear together, but this time they are at the finish line of a word or the end of the word. So they can sometimes be a bit tricky to pronounce really clearly, especially if you are used to your native language, which has, it can have different sound patterns at the end of the words. But don't worry, that's why we are here today. I have prepared some great words for us to practice with, and we will go through them step by step. Okay, just to make sure we are all feeling confident with these final clusters. Our goal is to make sure we can both hear and say these sounds accurately when they appear at the end of the words. Okay? All right. Are you all ready? Everybody ready for as we start for the final consonant clusters? Okay? Well, I think everybody's ready. Let's immediately start with this one. Okay. All right. This one. All right. So we have explored initial clusters at the beginning of the words and medial clusters that appear in the middle. Now, this we turn our attention to the third common position, which is on final clusters. As the slide shows, final consonant clusters are sequences of two or more consonant sounds that come right at the very end of a word or a syllable. So you might also hear these called final consonant blends or coda clusters. So the term coda, it imply to the ending part of a syllable. That's coda. So the sounds that come after the vowel sound, that's coda. So the key distinction here, as the slide points out, is that unlike medial clusters, which often bridge syllables, final clusters typically close a syllable, okay? Because this is the ending syllable. So they bring the sound of that syllable to a conclusion, okay? So these final clusters are incredibly common in English and can sometimes be quite challenging, especially when we are trying to link words together in a sentence or when we are adding grammatical endings like the s for plurals for or third person singular verbs or ed for past tense, something like that. So mastering these final blends is crucial for sounding clear and of course natural and for you to be easily understood by native speakers. So we will move on to some examples next to see these final clusters in action. Okay, let's immediately go over the examples because it's very important. Okay, we have first this table. So there are there are many tables that will be incorporated all throughout the discussion, and this is the first one. I put everything in a table so that the information are organized and you can easily navigate the information for each kind of final clusters. Okay? All right. So let's look at some specific examples for two consonant final clusters. As we discussed, these are the groups of two consonant sounds that come right at the very end of a word, which closes out the syllable, as I mentioned earlier, because that's the point of final clusters. Now, paying attention to these is, of course, it's very important for clear articulation and for distinguishing words from each other. All right, first, we have the SK cluster. Okay, SK cluster, as in the word desk. So this is a very common ending in English. When you say desk, notice how the S sounds fluently directly into the K sound right at the end. Okay, that's desk. There's no extra vowel sound in there after the K or even after the letter S or the hissing sound. You do not say suk, suk, sk, sk. It's just, the individual sound of this particular cluster SK is like this. Sk, 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 something like that. But there's still a little bit of vowel sound in between it, because of course, it's really hard to pronounce this particular final consonant cluster without, without any vowel sound. If we try to pronounce this as its own, as only cluster, it's really hard to pronounce it without any vowel sound. But as you incorporate it in a word, as we find it, as we how do you call that, as we observed, as we discover it used in different words, you will be able to remove that particular added vowel sound between these letters, these consonant letters. Okay, you didn't say sk, sk, okay, but disk. It's very clear. It's very consistent from S to K. No vowel sound in between, no pause in between. It's just very direct. Okay. So you'll find this same pattern in words like mask and risk. So try again. Try the words desk, mask, risk with me. Make sure that the SK cluster is clearly pronounced as unit at the end. Let's start with desk. Say desk. Again, desk. All right. Next, mask. Again, mask. And lastly, risk. Again, risk. All right, very good. Thank you so much for that. Next, we have the ST cluster, as in fast. So it still starts with a hissing sound here, but instead of a K sound, it ends with a T sound, okay? So this is another extremely common final cluster. The S sound smoothly transitions into the T sound at the very end of the word, like in fast. Okay, just like with the initial ST, the T here is unaspirated. So you will hear this in test and first, aside from fast. So let's practice all these words. Okay, let's start with fast. Say fast. Again, fast. Okay, very good. Next, test. One more time, test. Excellent. And lastly, we have first. Again, first. Okay, very good. Anyway, moving on, we have the anti-cluster, which is found in the word want. Here, the N sound, which is, a nasal sound, it is made with your tongue touching the roof of your mouth, okay? That's the N sound. Sorry for that. That's the N sound. Your tongue is touching the roof of your mouth. N. Again, N. You try say this particular no, particular letter. N. Again, N. So it transitions directly into T sound at the end. Like in the word, again, want. This is a very frequent cluster, also present. Depends. It is also present in bent paint. Okay? So try to say all these words with me, focusing on that clear NT ending. Okay? Let's start with want. Say want. Again, want. All right, very good, everyone. Next is bent. Again, bent. Excellent. Next and last, paint. Again, paint. Okay, good. So paint has a diphthong sound, right? If you've noticed, and if you were on our previous sessions, I've already talked about diphthongs. So diphthongs is when a vowel sound glides to another vowel sound smoothly. So the diphthong here in paint is the A sound. Okay, paint, A. A is the diphthong. All right. Okay. So following that cluster, NT, we have the ND cluster as in hand. This is the voiced counterpart to NT. The N sounds blend directly into the D sound at the end of the word. Say, for example, the word hand in here. So, hand. Both sounds are voiced. This cluster appeals in words like sand and fine. So, let's try all those words, okay? 3 words. Let's start, of course, with hand. Again, hand. One more time, hand. Okay, good. Next is sand. Your turn. Again, sand. All right, okay. And lastly, we have find. Again, find. Okay, good. All right. We shall have the next one, of course. We have the LD cluster as in cold. Here, the L sound made with your tongue against um the roof of your mouth. So transitions directly into the D sound in cold. This is a common ending. You'll find this particular cluster in the words build and field. So practice, cold, build, field, ensuring that clear, how do you call it? Is it LD? Let's just say, yeah, LD. LD, was I talking about LD? Yeah, LD could blend, okay? All right. So let's try to practice all the words in this particular cluster. We start with cold. Again, cold. Okay, next, mm, build. Again, one more time, build. All right, and lastly, we have paint. Okay, very good. All right, those are the words for ND cluster, hand, sand, field. For LD, cold, build, field. Okay, all right, that's that. Anyway, let's move on. Next, the LF cluster with the example word self. Okay, this combines the L sound with the F sound at the end of the word. Say, for example, again, the word self. So you pay attention to how your mouth moves from the T position to forming the, not T, but L position to forming the F sound. Okay, so this cluster also appears in golf and shelf. So let's try to articulate those words, starting with, of course, Our example here, self. Again, self. All right, um, next is golf. Say golf. Again, still your turn, golf. All right, okay. And lastly, we have shelf. Your turn. Next, shelf. Um, say it again. Okay, very good, everyone. Okay, just focus on the LF ending. That's just how you do it, okay? And finally, for this slide, the LK cluster as in milk. So here, the L sound transitions directly into the K sound at the end. So for example, milk. So it's a quick shift from the L to the K. The note here is very important, while milk clearly has both the L and K sounds. Words like walk have a silent L, right? So always pay attention to the specific word. For milk and silk, the I is definitely there. Say milk and silk with me. Is that only? Milk, silk, and walk. Okay? All right. Let's try first, of course, the sample word. Milk. Your turn. Again, milk. Okay. All right. Next is silk. Your turn. Lastly, silk. All right, very good. And we have the silent one here, walk. So there's a silent L in talk as well as in walk. Okay. All right. Okay. Anyway, the crucial point with all these final clusters is to ensure that all the consonant sounds are pronounced clearly at the end of the word. So you don't have to be totally worried only about that. Okay, you can be worried maybe sometime, maybe just a little moments, but don't be overwhelmed into digging that particular mistake maybe, because you cannot really grow if you don't want to outgrow yourself. Okay, all right. Next we have this one. This is a continuation basically, so two consonant final clusters. This is a competition. All right, first cluster, LP. Again, LP. So first we have that LP cluster as in the word help. This is a clean transition from the L sound to the P sound right at the beginning of the word. Okay, help. It is important to make sure both sounds are fully articulated, and here's the P that is clearly released. You'll also find this cluster in sounds or words like scalp and gulp. They try they try to how do you call that, they try to pay, not pay, let's just not focus on that. They try basta, they tried, that's what I can say. Let's not go over the details, okay? All right. Anyway, there should be a clean transition from L to P as you've mentioned earlier. So it's important to make sure both sounds are fully articulated and the P is clearly released. Okay, you will also find this cluster in words like scalp and gulp. So, try to say all those words with me, ensuring that distinct LP sound and ending is really real. Anyway, let's start with help. Again, help. Your turn. One more time. Okay, very good, everyone. Next to that is scalp. Your turn. Okay. All right. That's scalp for me. Next is gulp. Next to me is gulp. Again, say it again. Gulp. Okay. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much for that, everyone. That's for the LP consonant cluster. Okay. All right. Um. Um, we have, of course, we move on to the next. Now, next, the MP cluster, as in dump. This is very similar to to the media we discussed. So the M sound made through the nose with the closed lips, and it flows directly into the P sound dump. So it's a jump. So it's basically ties with that. Okay. All right. By saying the words for me. Okay, because I can't really see it clearly. So first one is LP, LP4, the topics that we have discussed so far. Okay. Anyway, that's just a suggestion, but it should not be done really. Okay. All right. Next is MP dump. So this is very similar to the similar to the um how do you call that, to the journal publication, and then not publication, but yeah, you just try to save that. Okay, it's actually in all citations, I guess. I am really not keeping notes. Okay. All right. Okay. Anyway, next is the MP cluster found in bank. Okay. All right. That's MP, as in dump. Okay. Um, uh, this is very similar to the medial MP we discussed. The M sound made through the nose with closed lips flows directly into the P sound, dump. It's a tight, smooth blend. This cluster is also common in stumps and jumps. Let's practice them. Okay. All right. That's for the MP sound. Okay. Next, uh, NG and K. Okay. That is for the IP transcription. That is why um it's not really reflected on the system already. It's because I just realized, that this particular tourism is really important, and of course, it's for perceived ease of use. It's totally convenient because I can print anytime and anywhere. Okay, not anywhere, but maybe anytime. Okay. All right. That is dump. MP, I'm sorry, MP. The words here include dump, stump, and jump. Let's try to hear from each one. Okay? Starting with dump. How about you? Um, I took all that. White hoodie? I don't know. But yeah, that's on NGK, found in bank. Okay? It's a nasal sound. Okay. Okay. Actually, that's how it is pronounced on its own. Ka. Okay? There's actually no vowel sound if we try to use this on variety shows, maybe, or any sort of something, any sort of similar to that. Okay? All right. That's bank. So yeah, bank. So the Nikki is the one nominated that, actually. Maybe if I on the other person's shoes. You gift him his shoes, and then the inside is really not shoes. Okay, it's his birthday. Okay, we were so excited. Anyway, that's the third consonant cluster for this table. Then we have the NS cluster, as in dance. Here, the N sound transitions smoothly into the S sound right at the end. Okay, they can dance. So it's a continuous flow of air from the nasal end to the S sound. So this cluster is also in words like hens and parents. So there's that particular consonant cluster. So let's try dance, hens, prince, enduring quality. Okay. Anyway, that's for uh NG, how do you call that? NGS or NS, and not NG but NS. Okay. Here the N word, of course. I'm sorry. N sound. I mean N sound. Sorry for that. Well, I'm sorry for that. It's the N sound transitions. It transitions smoothly into the S sound right at the end tense, okay? It's a continuous flow of air from the nasal end to the S sound. All right. So this cluster is found also in words like hence and prince. Let's try dance, hence, and prince with me. So it ensures that you should ensure that there is clean NS ending there. Okay. There's should be an N sound and an S sound, a hissing sound at the end, of course. All right, let's try first the dance. Okay, dance. Again, dance. Okay, all right. Next is hence. Again, hence. One more time, hence. And lastly, we have prince. Again, prince. One more time, prince. All right, that's that. Of course, if there's a hissing sound, there's an equivalent buzzing sound for it because there are words that, despite its spelling, it is pronounced with a buzzing sound or a letter Z sound, okay? A voiced sound. Anyway, that is on NZ. That's NZ cluster as in fans. So this is particularly notable because, as the slide indicates, it is often a plural marker, or it indicates the third person singular verb ending, meaning here the N sound, it is followed by the voiced Z sound, okay, like in fans. So the Z sound here is voiced, meaning your vocal cords vibrate. And how do we check if a particular sound is voiced or voiceless? Of course, a quick tip that I've mentioned in our previous discussions is this one. Touch your neck, say the sound. If you feel vibration, it's voiced. If there is none, of course, it's voiceless. Let's try the Z sound. Z, 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 Z. There is clearly vibration in there, meaning that yes, this is a voiced sound. Okay? All right. Where am I? Where am I? NZ. Okay, that's fans. Anyway, this is that particular buzzing sound. This is also how we pronounce the S ending in words like runs and beans when the preceding sound is voiced. Okay. All right. So practice these three words. Make sure that the final Z sound is voiced and clear. Okay. All right. Let's have dance. Again, dance. Next is runs. Again, runs. Followed by beans. Again, beans. Okay. And finally, for this slide, we have the PS cluster, as in stops. This is another very common cluster, frequently appearing as a plural or third person singular marker on verbs. So it's the P sound followed immediately by the S sound, as in stops. So the S or the hissing sound here is in voiced, of course, because when we try to say this sound and touch your neck, s, there's no vibrations at all, meaning that again, this is unvoiced, or we call it also as voiceless sound. Now, this is how the S ending is pronounced when the preceding sound is unvoiced. So we have other examples here, cups and laps. So let's try to say those three words. Starting with stops, say stops. Okay, again, stops. All right. Next is cups. Again, cups. And lastly, laps. Again, laps. Okay. So those are the first few two consonant final clusters, okay? So what I can say for this is that you to pay attention to whether the final S sound is voiced or unvoiced depending on the preceding sound. So because that's, I think, the hardest, or the most difficult one to distinguish, because both of them has a spelling with letter S, okay? It's just how you pronounce it clearly. Is it a hissing sound or a buzzing sound? So yeah, this is the first slide. Let's move on to the next slide. Continuing with two consonant final clusters. First, we have TS cluster, as in the word cats. So this is a prime example of a plural marker or a third person singular verb ending. So when the preceding sound is, voiceless or in voice, it's the T sound made with your tongue tapping behind your teeth, and then it's followed immediately by the S sound, as in cuts, for plurality. Both are unvoiced. You will hear this exact pattern in words like hats and hits. So try to say all these words. We have um cuts, again, cuts. Next, hats, hats. And lastly, hits, hits. Okay. Next is the GZ cluster, as in dogs. This is voiced counterpart to TS. So this cluster also functions a plural marker for third person singular third person plural marker, or yeah, third person singular verb ending. That's that. So it is specifically when the preceding sound is voiced. So it's the G sound followed by the voiced Z sound, as in dogs. So remember, the Z here means your vocal cords are vibrating. So this pattern applies to words like bugs and hugs. Let's practice all these words starting with dogs. Say dogs. One more time. Dogs. Next, hats. Again, hats. Lastly, hits. Again, hits. Okay. Moving on, we have the THS cluster found in pats. This one is interesting because it's a plural ending for words that end in the TH sound. So the note points out that the pronunciation often varies. So you might hear it as the unvoiced, followed by, like leading to pats. So pats can be pronounced with either an unvoiced THS or a voiced THZ. Both are acceptable. So let's try it both ways. First with the unvoiced THS and then with voiced THZ. The word is pats, path, pats, or pads. I don't know. But anyway, that's that. Following this is the KD cluster, okay? As in walked. Similar to PT, this is another important past tense marker. Here, it's the K sound followed by a voiced D sound, like walked. So notice how the D sound here is voiced because the K is invoiced, and the ending automatically adjusts. Of course, it's not walked with an extra syllable, but the smooth K to D transition. This applies to looked and parked too. So let's articulate all these words. First with walked, again, walked. Next is looked, again, looked. And lastly, ensuring that clear voice K D past ending, okay? All right. Okay. Anyway, um, we have here the final one for this slide, the FT cluster, as in gift. So this is a direct blend of the F sound flowing into the T sound at the end of the word, gift. Both are invoiced. This cluster is also found in left and soft. So try gift, left, soft, making sure that FT ending is distinct and crisp. Okay? Let's start with gift. Say gift. Again, gift. Next is left, left. And lastly, soft. Again, soft. Okay. All right. So that's that. Um, okay. Let's move on to the next one. We are now on three consonant. Wait. Okay. We are now on our first three consonant final cluster slide. Okay. It's a bit. Let me try to zoom it to widen the table for you so that you can really clearly see the different words for each table. Okay. All right. Maybe this would do. Okay. All right. So we see our final slide for today's lesson, which focuses on three consonant final clusters. Okay, these are indeed the most complex clusters, and they often appear with grammatical endings, which makes them very important. So the notes also highlight some common challenges and simplifications in natural speech. Okay, all right. Okay, let's have the first one, SKT cluster, as in the word ask. Okay, that's true. So this is a very common past tense ending. It's the S sound followed by an aspirated K sound and then an invoiced T asked. T at the end. So it's not ask Ed with an extra syllable. You will hear this exact pattern in words like risked. So try saying these two words. We have asked again, asked. Next we have um how do you call that? Um an activity, a playful activity, like a hangout activity basically. Okay? All right. Next is the KST cluster as in text. Text. That's that. So this is another frequent ending where the X spelling typically represents the KS sound, which then combines with the final T text. So it's a K sound meant you know, and yeah. So they are, this is another frequent ending where the X spelling typically represents the KS sound, okay? So a T sound, all articulated rapidly. This cluster also appears in next. Let's practice text next. Make sure all three sounds are distinct but seamlessly connected at the end, okay? Moving on, we have the LPS cluster, double, how do you call it? This is a classic example of plural or third singular vocabulary uh, verb ending. Let's just say that. So it's the L sound followed by P and then the unvoiced helps. All three sounds must be pronounced clearly. This pattern also applies to each works like gazebo or something, anything of sort. Okay. All right. So that's that. All three sounds must be pronounced clearly. This pattern also applies to words like gulps, say helps. Okay. Focusing on the clear LPS ending. Let's just say that. Okay. It's either one or five, actually. Three, four, five. The RTS. Okay. Anyway, let's just move on to that. We have the LPS cluster found in helps. This is a classic example of a plural or third person singular verb ending. So it's the L sound followed by P and then invoiced S. Helps. All three sounds must be pronounced clearly. This pattern also applies to words like gulps, and other, kind of word. All three sounds must be pronounced clearly. So this pattern also applies to words like gulp, say, helps, gulps. Will make focusing on the clear PS ending. Okay. Next is the MPS cluster as in jumps. So similar to the LPS, this also functions as a plural or third person singular verb ending. It's the M sound, then P then revoked again, revoked. Okay. Anyway, that's for the first slide. Okay. First set of master's degree. Okay. All right. Next to that, we have where were we? NTS, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. No, not NTS, but RTS. Okay. All right. Let's have the NZ. Okay. Um, hmm, not NZ, but NDS. Let's focus on that. NDS. Um, this is another common plural or third person singular verb ending. It's the R sound followed by T, then the unvoweled and voiced S that starts. This requires the tongue to move quickly from the R position to the T, and then there's his. You know, this applies to words like hurts. Practice starts. Hurts focusing on that quick retreat stage. Okay, followed by the RTS cluster as in starts. This is another common plural or how do you call that? Third person singular verb ending here. So it's the R sound followed by T sound and then and voiced S starts. This requires your tongue to move quickly from the S R position to the L position. So this applies to words like Hurts, practice. So practice these three words. We start with starts. Again, starts. Next is hurts. Again, hurts. And next, focusing on that. What do you call that? We try to focus on, maybe. Mhm. Okay. Anyway, that's for the first syllable still. Okay, there's two syllables for these. Okay, where were we? We're on NDZ. Okay, hands are example of that. Next is FTS as in gift. Okay, we've talked about that already, so let's just skip on that. It's just the plural form. Okay. Next is the initial cluster, as in initial or international clusters in past 10 months. Okay. Anyway, finally, perhaps the most challenging one on the slide is the, oh, how do you pronounce this word? It's the hunts. I don't know. But yeah, that's that. That's that. The note is spot on. This can be very tricky. So it can be combines the NG sound with the K sound and the TH sound. And then also there's also S sounds. It's often simplified in casual speech. You might hear speakers rap one by one of these words. So, you know, these three consonant final clusters really push our articulation skills. So the key is to practice moving smoothly and precisely from one consonant to the text, okay? Paying close attention to whether it's finals or final S or D is voiced, or maybe, it's really, there's really plenty of excellent researches in here. I don't know why it's still ResearchGate, but yeah, that's that. Um, so we have now systematically gone through initial. Let's move on to the next table and the last one. Is it? Yeah. Okay. First, we have MPTS cluster, as in the word prompts. Okay. Anyway, this is composed of M, P, and S and T. So the IPA shows promptly do that. Okay. It promptly explain it often elided or dropped in natural speech. So well, the full deliberate pronunciation would have been prompts. Many speakers will try to speak it in their language, right? So next, we have this particular video for that particular outfit. Okay, this is a very common reaction. Okay, anyway, next to that is I don't know. I'm just looking at the clock, but yeah. Anyway, for a moment, let me hide you there. Okay. All right. That's, sample words would include strengths. So this one is notoriously difficult. It's the how do you call that? It's how should I say? It's that. It's just like that. Okay. Anyway, that's for MPTS. MGTHS. Where is it? Oh yeah. Um, where am I? Let's just say we focus now on arts afts. Okay. We'll focus on my partner, something like that. Okay. Um, what do we have here? What does he work? Aims to attempt. Okay. Anyway, let's try to do that. Okay. Anyway, first we have here the MPSTS cluster, as in the word prompts. This is composed of M, P, S, and T, followed by the IPA shows on prompts. Okay. with the T in parenthesis because, as known explains, the T is often elided or dropped in natural speech. So while the full deliberate pronunciation would be prompt, right? Many speakers will simplify it to some word prompts. So this is very common reduction. So let's try saying prompts both ways. First, trying to articulate all four sounds and then allowing it for the natural T elision. Okay, first prompts. Yan, prompts. Next is prompts. Prompts. All right. We have the next one. Where am I? Next is LFT. Yeah, LFTHS. Okay, as in attempts. Okay. Denote highlights. Call that. It highlights that particular thing. Okay. All right. Next to me is actually PH. We have we have provided. Okay. All right. That's that. LTHS, like in the word twelfths. Okay. All right. Anyway, we focus on the next few, days for engagement. Anyway, let's have the next and the final one, actually. DTHS. Let me check on that. DTHS sounds your father name. Like it's too not really recent. Alright. Okay. Alright, we have this one. Anyway, that's that. That's the last one. DTHS. DTH. Okay. That's the last one. DTHS. Alright. It can let's just try to do that. Anyway, we will encounter these kind of words in every session, most likely. Okay. Alright. That's the last one, everyone, for consonant cluster. And finally, for this slide, that's that. Anyway, this cluster often undergoes simplification, as the note explains, due to voicing and articulation complexities. So the E sound is voiced, while the chat GPT is no link like on that. Okay. Anyway, yeah. All right. That's that. Okay. Um, Here these four consonant clusters are definitely advanced tier territory. The main takeaway here is that um why people tend to just destroy everything, okay? Or modify everything. Let's just have it that way. Yeah, of course. Well, anyway, um, okay, that's that. Anyway, what are we doing? All right. Okay. Actually, everyone, we have just navigated into advanced territory. This main takeaway here is that while we strive for clear pronunciation in very natural for English, test speakers often make suitable reductions by dropping one by one. Okay. Anyway, that's that for consonant clusters. Okay. Let's try to check on the words. Okay. Next is this one, English pronunciation clusters. Initial consonant cluster. My question is, um, not yet for question. Maybe we can just discuss. All right. We're just navigating through the most challenging set of consonant clusters. Actually, those four consonant final clusters. You've seen how complex these can be and how English speakers often naturally simplify them. So this includes our deep dive into initial, medial, and final consonant clusters. You are now been introduced to addressed those particular issues or something like that. So it's absolutely time to practice for now. This is the moment we take all this information and start on the building that critical muscle memory and confidence will be, putting. So remember, the goal is not to be discouraged by the complexity. Do but be surprised. Well, I already know because I'm the one who bought it. But anyway, it's final clusters, okay? Final clusters are also known as full consonant blends or coda clusters, are sequence of two or more consonant syllables at the very ending of a word or syllable, okay? All right. Anyway, we looked at a whole wide range, right? Okay. So far for consonant clusters in two consonant clusters here, we can say, all right, we can say, okay, let's wrap up everyone. Maybe, um, please set higher expectations and yeah, actually, because that would make you very uncomfortable. Maybe you can do that. You can have another spare love wins. Okay. Anyway, that's that. We have first here SK as in desk. Next ST fast. NT want. ND hand. Uh, LD cold. FK self and of course is near. That's that. Okay. Anyway, that's that. Something like that. All right. Okay. Let's move on. Where am I for a moment? Okay. Those are first set of two consonant final clusters. We have again LP help, MP dump, NK bank, MSNZ dance words. Anyway, there's no record of that, of course. Maybe we have this particular framework. Maybe we'll go for a moment. Um, that's that. Okay. Next, we have the second set of words. LP for help. Um, MP for dump. Okay. All right. Um. Okay. Anyway, that's that. For third section, still on top consonant final clusters. We have blusters. Okay. That's that. So for example, stops. Whoa. And sometimes. Okay. Okay. All right. Um. That's that. LP for help. MP for dump. NK for bunk, NK for drink. Okay? Alright. We can do that. Next set of words are these. Still on consonant final clusters for inhypen. TS, cats. GZ, dogs. THS, pats. I'd worked and high level. Okay? Alright. Anyway, that's that. So these four columns clusters are defined advanced history, right? So this is actually the end of our writing history. I'm not gonna be using that, okay? Or either of you. Anyway, that's that. Well, okay. All right. Okay. All right. That's that. Anyway, the main takeaway here is that while we have, the means for it always hit 10. No. But yet, if I set it to 2355, my ending. Okay? Alright, that's that. Anyway, that's just an example, everyone. The big takeaway here is again, teachers is that getting huddle in pronunciations, the biggest hurdle, okay? Alright. Okay, everyone, that's that. Um, anyway, this is the big takeaway. It's like science, okay? I love science, I love her. Anyway, for that, we have this house. Okay? Alright. We have cats, clusters. We have TS for cats, GZ for dogs, TNK for tapped health. Okay? Anyway, not that. Okay? Alright. That's for two consonant clusters. Not necessarily we say that the syllable or in the picture. It's just a little bit of creative sessions. That's why uh, specific articles were really chosen. Okay? Alright. Okay. Okay. Alright. That's for two consonant clusters. Let's move on to the next one. On three consonant clusters, we have first SKT for asked, KST for text, LEPS for helps, MPS for jumps, RTS for starts, and NDS for jumps, and then single fee, okay? Anyway, that's that. The next and last slide is this one. On China, on Charlie. Sorry for that. Let's have first MPSDS. There's five letters in there, but we can say prompts. NGTHS, or we have strengths, IPA, and it can communicate information clearly, English for information clearly. And lastly, um, that's that. Okay. All right. Okay. That's that. MPSDS prompts, NGTHS strength, MPKTS triumphs, thrumps, maybe. Okay. Um, that's for the last couple of consonant clusters. Start with MPSDS prompts and GTHS word example word. Next is this one. Okay. Anyway, that's actually good. But yeah, that's that. And that's a wrap up, everybody. We have already talked about, how do you call that? What's the topic? We are not able to, do anything. That's just that. And of course, there's a buzzing sound. Okay? Anyway, let's do that. Okay. All right. That's the one. Strengths and weaknesses. His attempts of strengths, and and his attempts at language new tasks. Okay. All right, that one. So the truth next is on where is it? Next is Charlie Letter Charlie and Fleming. Of course, we've already prepared one. We're just acquaintance at the time. Okay. Anyway, next is Vodka Chica Sharma Med. Okay. Thought that was easy. Of course, it's not. Anyway, that's that. And we are actually at the end. We are going to wrap up consonant clusters now. Again, we've talked about per day, each type or each part of the module model. Okay, media, that one. Then Itaco, Google Scholar. Okay, all right, that's good. So everyone, we've covered a lot of really ground today. Okay, we started by defining what consonant clusters are, those groups of two, three, or even four consonant sounds that appear together. We then systematically explore them in all three positions. Okay, all right, that's that. Um, So, um, before that, oh no, yeah, let's try to practice first. I forgot about that one. We're still not on silent letters. I'm sorry for that. Okay. Oh, that's actually where it's okay. Well, it's already 1 hour, I think. Yeah, it's already 1 hour. We already hit the 1 hour mark. So let's just, maybe continue that tomorrow, or just an introductory activity, maybe, or let's just practice on our own. Okay, you can always search for any practice drills for this particular topic. There's so plenty of them. There's so many of them. Okay, so yeah, everyone. That's that. So again, we started by defining what consonant clusters are. Those groups of two, maybe three or even four consonant sounds that appear together. We then systematically explore them in all three positions at the beginning of the words, in the middle, and especially at the end. And we looked at a wide range of examples from demos, command, what is this one? Yeah, that one. Okay. Like, sorry. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I'm just gonna use formal one. Depending on the auth. Okay, that one. Okay, all right. Okay, so that's that. We also we touched on how some of the particular consonant cluster types, particularly the longer ones, might naturally be simplified in everyday, right, in casual speeches. So the big key takeaway here, everyone, is that getting a handle of on these consonant clusters is genuinely a game changer for your English pronunciation. It's not just about sounding correct here; it's about sounding more natural, more increasing your fluency, and significantly improving your ability to understand spoken English, of course, because these blends are everywhere. You cannot form a sentence without blends. I promise you. So I really encourage you to keep practicing. It's like any skill, the more you consciously work on those smooth transitions between sounds, the more natural and automatic it will become. So don't be afraid to experiment, to exaggerate the sounds a bit first, and to record yourself, of course, to hit your progress. Is that correct? But yeah, thank you so much for your active participation and your focus today, everyone. I hope this session has given you a clear understanding and some practical tools to continue improving your English pronunciation. Keep practicing, and I look forward to seeing your progress. Good night, and have a great rest of the night ahead. Goodbye.